Welcome to the Injector's Business Blueprint, the show that helps you build a profitable and thriving med spa practice. Here, we don't just talk about overcoming med spa growth challenges, we equip you with firsthand accounts of what we did to help ourselves and our clients build profitable and sustainable practices they love. The next step in building a practice you love starts right now. Have you ever felt like you're just throwing marketing dollars out the window, hoping that it's going to bring in the right client, the right number of clients? But here's a hard truth, guys. If you don't know what your brand voice is, your brand image, your brand message, and what you really stand for, you won't be able to attract that right client to your business. So, today, Brandon and I are going to break down why getting really crystal clear in and around your marketing plan and strategy will be the game changer your business needs. And we're going to help you use your marketing to get the ideal clients through your door, spending top dollar with you.
Absolutely. Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the Injector Business Blueprint, the podcast designed to make that journey of med spa ownership just a little bit less lonely. So, you're joined today with myself, Brandon Mullen, and Erin McNeil. So, in our last episode, we kind of talked a lot about why we wanted to kind of do this whole podcast, YouTube situation in the beginning. But today, we're going to kind of pivot a little bit because currently we're in the threshold of the end of the year, Q4. And if you've been in the business for a season, you know how stressful that can be. So, we're going to kind of talk a little bit about marketing strategy today. So let's just kick it off, Erin. I know that you do a ton of amazing coaching with practice owners specifically. So, how do you kind of help start that conversation about helping people that have identified or maybe misidentified and need to re identify their ideal customer avatar or that person they're trying to get in the door?
Well, before we even get to identifying your ideal client or your ideal customer or patient, a lot of people skip that step. A
Hmm.
lot of people just skip to, I'm not good at marketing. I'm an injector. I don't know what I'm doing. So I'm just going to hire out an agency to go ahead and do this for me. And since they seemingly have more experience, I'm just going to throw a bunch of marketing dollars at this thing
Hmm.
and cross my fingers that it works. And a lot of the time, it doesn't work. And for that very reason, right, is because you've handed over the reins to an agency that doesn't know your brand vision, that doesn't understand your brand voice or brand messaging. And they're most likely, unfortunately, copying and pasting what they're doing for other med spas or other aesthetic practices that for some people it's working really well, but it might not work for you. And the reason why is people want to choose to work with a business that they feel sees them, understands them, where they're comfortable, where they feel like, okay, I can show up as myself. I can talk to this service provider. I
Hmm.
can trust in what they're doing. I believe that they are experts. So your ideal client should be saying that when they see your marketing, right?
Hmm.
And so I think, again, like just going back to the first question is doing that avatar exercise or that ideal client exercise, most people skip over it. And a lot of the time when I'm working with clients, I'm like, let's go back to the drawing board. Who are we trying to get through the door?
Hmm.
And so I almost like reverse engineer it with a lot of clients. And what I get people to focus on is name to me your top 3 clients, right? So I have them close their eyes. I'm like, in your mind's eye, who is your absolute favorite client? Exactly. Who is your absolute favorite client and why?
Okay.
Okay. Are they your favorite client because they just follow every instruction you give them? Are they your favorite client because they're always on time and they're never going to miss an appointment? Are they your favorite client because they spend the most? Right? You have to identify why that person is your ideal client because when you can start to really like identify in your mind's eye, oh, Sally Sue is my ideal client for all of these particular reasons, it's so much easier now because we understand who is Sally Sue, why she came to us, what her habits are. we then reverse engineer our marketing to suit other Sally Sues that are
Mhm.
just like her so that we attract, because if it worked with her, it'll most likely work with people just like her. So I actually have them pick, and they have to, like, for their homework assignment, they have to attach a photo. I want you to pick a real client, because what we want is, if I could have 1,000 Sally Sues, that's how I'm gonna build my business, is with
Mhm.
people just like that. And so we don't wanna market to everyone and cross our fingers and hope that they're gonna wanna pay our price point, gonna wanna follow our instructions, believe that we are the authority and expert, right? We don't wanna guess this stuff. I have them do that, and I know for a lot of business owners, they're like, "Erin, this is like, I already did this before. I worked with, another company where I had to do that." But if you find that you're throwing marketing dollars out there and you're getting people who are coming in and they're still like negotiating your rate or trying to like haggle you for a better discount, that's not an ideal client, right?
That's correct. And now that you're saying this out loud, I have a kind of challenge question for you. So, I'm sure that you've worked with business owners who maybe are like brand new, right? So, for someone maybe trying to get into aesthetics that's new and listening to this podcast, and maybe they have an idea of that ideal customer that they would want, or maybe they kind of understand based on the service offerings that they are gravitating towards offering. How do you help people identify that haven't been in practice yet? And I ask this question specifically, sort of selfishly too, because I'm working on a little project that I am going to slowly trickle in so I don't totally confuse the audience. But I'm working on kind of investing in a person to grow a business around them. So if there may be a market for a need, but you don't know that person yet, how do you kind of build a marketing strategy around generalities, but not kind of having a specific client book or the patient experience to draw from to get that ideal client?
I love that you've asked this, because it does help a lot of people who are just starting out. And so instead of thinking about how do I market all of the services that I do for this like wide range of people,
Mhm.
think about, in your experience or in your mind's eye, what would an ideal client look like or feel like, right? So, like, literally close your eyes. What do they do for work? Where do they live? Are they a city person, or are they in the suburbs? Do they live in the country? Do
Mhm.
they, eat farm to table, or do they have takeout all the time? Again, what kind of occupation do they have? Are they a professional? Are they raising children? Are they working part-time and Ubering at night? Like,
Mhm.
we really need to nail down, like, who in our mind's eye, whoever that person is for you, that you're like, I envision them being excited to come in. I envision them saying yes to whatever I offer in terms of programming for them. And so everyone's going to have a little bit of a different vision of what that person looks like.
Mhm.
And honestly, most people mirror it after themselves, but a lot of you guys, listen, you are not your ideal client. Okay, so stop trying to market like you're talking yourself,
Great
right?
point. Great
But
point.
the thing is, like, start asking yourself questions like, what occupation do they have? Do they have a big amount of disposable income, or a little bit where they really, that's a hard choice for them? Or where do they live? Are they city? Are they suburb? Are they a professional? Or maybe they're, a stay at home mom, right? You want to start nailing this out. Again, if you don't already have a book of business or those ideal clients that come and see you already, is like, nail down, who do you really want to attract into your business? And so the thing that I typically tell clients, and that I would give this to you as well, is your business, so I always think about real estate agents, right?
Mhm.
So, because we've all driven past, like, those different suburbs where there are the multi-million dollar homes, or maybe the house is like 800K,
Mhm.
or we've gone past places that are 250K. Nothing wrong with any of them, but there will be a part of that market where it really, like, it gravitates towards you. You're like, "That's my ideal situation."
Mhm.
Now, think about the real estate agent that's selling that home. How do they show up to the appointment to walk you through the house? Are they wearing Manolos, or are they wearing sneakers? Are they rolling up in a Toyota, or are they rolling up in a Benz? You want to start thinking about yourself when you're trying to attract someone like that real estate agent, right? So if I'm showing a $10 million home, what do you think the likelihood would be that if I roll up in an eco car and I look like I just came from a Pilates class
Mhm.
and I'm carrying a duffel bag, that I'm convincing the person to spend $20 million with me or $10 million with me,
Right.
right? So, you wanna think about it in that sense, right? Because it's almost like attracts like. And this is why, and I
Mhm.
know I'm going on a total side quest here, but this is why I don't love deep discounting when you're brand new, because like
Mhm.
attracts like. If you are doing lots of deep discounts and you think that's the marketing strategy that you need, you will attract people who are only into deep, deep discounts, and they're not into being a forever client. They're into being a forever bargain shopper.
Mhm.
Right? So, again, just advice for you is think about, like, when you put yourself inside of your new space
Mhm.
and you're like, "Okay, I'm open for business." Close your eyes and envision who is walking through the door. What does that person look like? What maybe handbag are they carrying? And again, not to judge everyone on the handbag that they carry, but there's a good chance that the way people show up in the world says a lot about who they are. And it just helps you at the very beginning. It's not perfect, it's not a perfect science, but it
Right.
definitely helps you pinpoint in general the kind of person that you envision walking through the door, so that when you go on Instagram or you start creating emails, you're really creating that with that particular person in mind. Again, like if my target demographic or my ideal client is 65 years old, I'm not going to use verbiage that Gen Z would respond to, right? I
Absolutely.
would use verbiage, or I would use the type of language or the type of imagery that's going to appeal to someone of that age group, so that they feel like, wow, this person, like, I feel connected already. And that's the whole point of marketing. Sorry, I went on a side quest there, but
I love your side quest. And yeah, you totally don't wanna be sus. I still don't really know if that even made sense, and I don't understand what that means, but I think that's what the Gen Zers or whatever letter we're on today, well, that's what they say, you don't wanna be sus. But no, I think there's some great points in there because there are a lot of unknowns, but I feel like there's a certain amount of due diligence that you need to do as far as, like, discovery, I like to call it, like, looking at, what is the median income in your area? Also, who else is in your area? I know that you love this saying that I say that Starbucks doesn't care that Dunkin' Donuts is down the street, but there are certain people that go to Dunkin' Donuts and there are certain people that are addicted to Starbucks, like me. So, who's going to Starbucks? Who's going to Dunkin' Donuts? But there's a lot of things I think that people can do that maybe they necessarily haven't, but it's not too late, right? There's still time to kind of reinvent that customer avatar and maybe like not rebrand completely, but kind of reinvent, zhuzh up whatever you have going to enhance, to kind of change your marketing strategy. Cause there's so much that you can do with digital, social media. Print is still not dead, believe it or not. In the US at least, I don't know if this is the same in Canada, and everybody thinks that like Instagram is king, and that's not true. I've experienced it with, the practices that I manage and other people that I've helped do consulting with across the country. Facebook is alive and thriving here, and there's those 65-year-olds that can't even spell Instagram, and let alone TikTok. There's TikToks. Is that what you said? No, it was TikTok. But there's so many channels now. It's not just, I think a website is kind of, I mean, I'll stick to that till I die. Like everybody needs a website. I don't care who you are. But there's different strategies for every folks. And I think that at some point you kind of have to test the waters to see what's going to hit more than the other. And then when you get that feedback from those efforts and know that those people are coming in from those channels, maybe lean into one more than the other. But I don't even know where I'm going with all of this, but I think that there's different strokes for different folks, and not everyone can do a cookie cutter marketing strategy, I think is the overarching theme of that random synaptic misfire.
no, I love it, but it's so true. And to take that a step further,
Mhm.
the other thing that I do as a practice with every client that works through my program or that's a one-to-one client is, when you look at doing that like avatar exercise, your ideal client exercise, like it's not a one and done. Do
Mhm.
not have the belief that at the very beginning we already identified who our ideal client is, because as your business grows and changes and you shift and you pivot, and maybe you realize over time that you sell more of one thing than the other, or you get a little bit more into something over another thing, you will have to retarget who your ideal client is. So I usually, as a best practice, you want to do this like at least once a year. And the reason why is like, if you look to some of the biggest companies that have existed for 50 years, 100 years, and I use some of the big companies, right? Think about Apple. When they first
Mhm.
came out, who were they really targeting? They were
Right.
competing with, what was the company they were competing with? Not Dell. What was that? Intel,
IBM?
right? Or
Intel, yeah.
IBM, right? And
Mhm.
when you look at it, they were competing for more like commercial style businesses. And
Mhm.
now it's like the everyday person, right?
Mhm.
And so over time, what they realized, what their USP became is like, oh, we want this to be available for everyone. And then they shifted completely the way that they built their product, who they marketed to, and who their ideal client was, right? And
Mhm.
now, if you look at who their ideal client is, I don't necessarily know that I know it to be fact, but I would say their ideal client is a teenager or it's a Gen Z,
Mhm.
right? And the reason why is because they're more adaptable. They're going to check things out. They love the updates. They love all of that. And for me, I'm like, I still haven't updated my phone. Anyway, that's a bit of a rant, but just going back to, right? Like, don't do it once and think that you're done forever. So, when you have targeted that ideal client in your mind's eye, especially if you're brand new and you haven't gotten a chance to test it. So, I agree with you, Brandon. You do have to test,
Mhm.
is this my ideal client? Am I actually able to attract them in? Now let's move on to like, how do you test if it's working? Did your ideal client or those types of people, did they start coming in? Did you catch their attention?
Mhm.
And you will be able to see what kind of people your marketing is grabbing. And if it's not your ideal client, then it's time to dig in deeper or refine that practice a little bit more, refine what you're doing. And so that brings me to my next question,
Mhm.
maybe more so not necessarily a question, but you mentioned marketing strategy. And so,
Mhm.
like, I don't even touch strategy until you, as a business owner, or maybe you're the practice manager, until you have a very clear idea of that brand image, that brand voice, the brand message, and that brand vision. That's when I really feel like you can put a strategy together because now you know who you're trying to talk to, you understand their lifestyle, you understand their level of commitment, what they're looking for, what they pay attention to, and what they take action on.
Mhm.
So for you, when someone is starting out, or think back to when you started out with Ashley,
Mhm.
what did you do for a marketing strategy? Did you know to go in on that ideal client, or did you test and measure a lot?
Heck no, it was a lot of experimentation. It was seeing, I don't know, have you ever cooked pasta, like the straight spaghetti, and when you throw it at the cabinet and it sticks, that's when you know it's done? Did you know that?
I
Oh
knew
my God,
that.
I said that recently and someone was like, "I never knew that was a thing." I was like, "How did you not know that?" Like, my grandma taught me that when I was like 5.
Well, because we didn't grow up with the internet, hun. That's why.
Oh,
So we
well,
had to do,
that's
like,
true.
real life practical things, like an actual trial and error. Now,
Mhm.
you can just go on Google or YouTube and see all the mistakes everyone else made and then avoid them.
That's okay. My kids still won't do that. But anyway, so no, I mean, we really didn't understand what to do or how to do it. So, thinking back, so Q4 is like holiday sale time, right? Starting to think about that, not only generate ideas, but how are we going to communicate? How are we going to advertise that to our patients without pissing them off, too, right? So, Ashley loves to do a 12 days thing. So, one deal every day. It's released at midnight, and our people like to stay up at midnight and get that 12:01 email. So, it was like an email every day. So, we did piss off a couple people because I saw a lot more unsubscribes. So then we started to get a little crafty, and like one would be a text, one would be an email blast kind of thing. So we kind of like diversified it a little bit and also put it on Instagram because Facebook is not our thing. It's more personally. We do have a presence. Apparently, there's a lot of groups that talk about us, but our meat is Instagram and that's what we gravitate towards. So that's what our clients over the years have gravitated towards because that's what we do. It was really just a lot of, I like what you said, test and measure. So we would just do that. I see like the open rate was amazing though. It's over 80%, which for email I think is really good. but we were consistent. We started initially before even like Q4, we would do like a monthly or bi-monthly newsletter depending on what was going on. So inflecting a little bit of personal information like at the beginning of the newsletter and then putting deals in kind of hooked people in the beginning, and then we gave them information as the newsletter went on. So it wasn't like we were used car salesmen and be like, we have a 2.99% interest rate on these CPO Mercedes until the end of the month. Like it was less like salesy, but more like, okay, like we're doing this for you. Like this is a benefit for you. You have the opportunity to purchase, kind of thing. So it was more of a personalized marketing strategy, inflecting a little bit of us and also putting like business in there too with clear call to actions. I think that's very important because confused people do not want to buy. And putting
Yeah, and
things
most people need to be led.
right. And they don't want to be like, if you make a deal that's super complicated, then nobody wants to buy it because they don't know what the hell they're buying. Like,
100%.
I want to be clear on it too. So if I want to be clear, I want you to be clear too. There's a lot of that, and I feel like that trickled over into subsequent years of how we market things and who we market to. We're able to kind of distinguish some of the higher paying clients and what their needs are, and maybe we curtail marketing efforts to that certain subset of patients versus some other. So there's a lot of kind of thought that goes into it, but I think what we began talking about is identifying that customer avatar first and seeing what they want and being where they are. I love the other descriptors that you said, where are they, what are they doing for work? Where are they going to work out? Do they have kids? Do they have dogs? Like, figuring out more of the personal aspects versus purely focusing on discounting is not the way to go, in my opinion.
Hey, it's Erin here. We're just cutting in real quick to remind you if you're finding value in today's episode, make sure to subscribe at injectorbusinessblueprint.com. Never miss an episode and get access to exclusive content and tools that we share only with our subscribers. All right, thanks for sticking with us. Now, let's dive back into the episode and keep building the practice you love. Okay, you said a couple things here that I think are super important because a lot of people give up, right?
Mhm,
If they've paid an agency or they threw money at marketing and then it didn't work, they're like, "Oh, marketing doesn't work. Sales
mhm,
funnels don't work. These things don't work." But it probably didn't work because you were trying to appeal to everyone, which appealed to no one. And
mhm.
so you mentioned consistency, which I think is the thing that people don't do enough of. Consistent at trying over and over and over and over again until you get the right result that you want. And too many people give up, right? And so when we talk about test and measure over the course of the last 4 years, so when we think about like how many emails was that? How many posts did you have to do to
Mhm.
figure out now when we look at the practice that you run with Ashley specific, that practice I'm assuming does extremely well. And that wasn't just by like, happenstance. That was test and measure. And it was really leaning in and continuing to reinvest time and resources and energy into refining your practice so that you could keep narrowing in on who really takes action and who is really responding to what we put out there. You
Absolutely.
agree?
100%. And it's really hard in the beginning too, because if you are just starting out, you kind of don't know where or how much to budget. I mean, yes, people say certain percentages, but that's like percentage of what? Like this is year one. I don't have anything else to measure against. So, do we do the print? Do you spend the money on SEO optimization? Do you do the Instagram, Facebook, Google ads? The answer is yes and maybe. It all depends. Or I love that stock legal response. It all depends, right? Like everybody has a different budget, but again, is your market super digital? Do you do those little mailers in the mail? The post I think postcards, that's what they're called.
I used to
Um,
do flyers on cars back in the day before there was social media.
Right.
Yep.
Do you door knock and go introduce yourself? I've done that too. I'll try to sum it up quick. Our second location was in a very different area and the customer avatar was completely different. And did we do the due diligence in investigating and discovery? Absolutely not. They literally were subscribing to Behind the Times magazine. They didn't know what Facebook was or Instagram. or they literally thought we were a tanning salon. So
But what happened to the business because you didn't do that work?
the good thing is that the brand presence was already so strong that we were able to kind of pivot at year 2 and focus more on print and education versus Instagram stories and digital. And it's attracted people more by word of mouth. And I think it's a great example of like everything doesn't work for everybody in every single market. And you really do need to do your homework. Everything else was fine. Like the location was amazing. The space was perfect. Like it fit the brand, but also we needed to really like hone in on the population and not just assume that what worked in one location was going to be duplicated and work just the same in the other.
And to your point of what when you're like, "Well, it depends," because it does depend, and if you're not sure of that answer when we say like, "Well, it depends," because it does,
Mhm.
how you get to a definitive answer is the test and measure, which most people don't do. When we talk about like, how much money have you invested in marketing or, the last post that you did, how many, views well, views I don't even care about anymore. It's more about like how many saves did you get, how many people shared it.
Mhm.
And if you're not testing and measuring, and like, just so you know, in business, essentially everything should be a test
Mhm.
because there's always room to refine. But if you're not testing and measuring, how do you actually know? And so as you're applying these things, right? Like you need to realize that if you send an email blast out and you get, a lesser open rate, it's not that it doesn't work, it's that probably needs tweaking, right? Don't stop doing it, right? And that's why I talk about consistency. Like don't stop doing it. Go back in and refine it and understand who clicked it. Who did that actually appeal to versus who did it not appeal to? And I mean, now there are just so many like AI aids out there that you could pop your email blast into and say, like, tell me who this appeals to, and it will tell you, right? So, with that said, because I think testing and measuring is the thing that people don't like to do or don't know how to do, or again, they just think that this type of thing should happen overnight. I want to talk about after you've identified that ideal client
Mhm.
and you're refining your emails and your Instagrams and things like that. How do you know when to actually put marketing dollars behind it? Because I have a way that I teach, and I'd love to hear kind of your take on it because in the practices that you manage, like how do you know what is the right budget or if you should even spend money? Like, are you ready to spend money on ads or boost a post? Like, what are your measures of success that you're like, okay, now we're putting marketing dollars there?
So I will say that some of the print that we do, it's really hard to measure that ROI because people aren't always forthcoming, or we're not always in that habit of asking when a new referral comes in, like where did you come from? Like how did you hear about us? We're pretty good, but not 100%. So the print sometimes that we're involved with does trouble my heart, but also there's kind of a catch 22 because there's also a whole social circle around some of that print that you don't
Mm.
really want to like opt out of. And also some SEO engagement, when you're posting on your media page on your website that you did this, that cross links. So there's a little bit of like, is it actual ROI or just like for longevity's sake and consistency from like a different aspect? So some things I think hit a little bit better than others. But if it's one thing I always have to pick, it's leaning into digital because it's also more educational. I don't want people on Google. I'd rather have you on our website reading a blog that we made ourselves, not AI, or listening to one of our poster reels about a new procedure or product versus you going to Google.
Yeah, I find so many people are like, "Oh, I've spent all this money on marketing and it's not working," right?
Mhm.
So, most likely you haven't
Yeah.
figured out how to talk to your ideal client and how to attract them, or you haven't given them any instruction whatsoever.
Mhm.
Here's another thing that, like, I usually tell people is, like, it's time to spend marketing dollars when your organic stuff, your website, your TikTok, your Instagram, organically, without boosting anything or paying for anything, is bringing in new inquiries. It's bringing in people to your DMs. It's
Mhm.
opening conversations. That's when you know, okay, I could probably put some marketing dollars behind that particular post, right? You
Yep.
want to boost that, or an email really did well or helped convert or whatever link it was,
Mhm.
then maybe that's something that you would want to put as a landing page or an ad funnel so that everyone who you're paying to get their eyeballs and attention will be funneled into that particular thing since we already know without marketing dollars it was converting for you. So is that something that you guys take into consideration, or now that you're maybe more established, it's just more like a cog in the wheel that you have a marketing budget, you already know your ad spend? Maybe I'm asking 2 questions here, like, what are you doing now versus at the very beginning?
Yeah, to be honest, I think right now we're very fortunate in that the providers that we've brought on over the past couple years, they're just starting to grow leaps and bounds, but it's more word of mouth and patient referrals. We're on Facebook groups. Like I said, we're not on Facebook, but we're in socialized in Facebook groups. So to be honest, we don't have like a super specific budget, but we're just trying to be consistent with what we're already involved in and making things that are genuine and have a little bit of heart behind them and not like focused on just the sales. And when I think the patients see that authenticity and that shines through our marketing, so it just organically turns into sales. And I know that sounds so stupid and cheesy, but it's the honest to God's truth. And I know that does not work for everybody. And there's a lot of effort that needs to be considered in other instances. Like I said, that little project I'm working on, investing in someone else, that's going to take a lot of test and experimenting to see what's going to hit there. But again, just like kind of doing some initial research into seeing like what's going to hit or what do you think is going to hit with that target market? What's current? Dancing on TikTok is not going to get me leads. It may help others in different areas when your ideal customer is in that, 20 to 25-year-old range. It's a little bit of trial and error, but having a little bit of faith in one thing and not just doing it for a month, not getting any leads and say, "Oh, fuck it. Like I'm done. We'll just kick the can down the road and do something else." You really need to focus on one thing and be consistent with it and make sure that you've exhausted all avenues that make sense before trying something else.
100%. I couldn't agree more. I find, yeah, a lot of people are ready to throw in the towel too soon or try something completely different,
Mhm.
which it's like in my mind, I always think about like if you have like a specific set of services that you offer and you can't sell them, you're not getting anyone to purchase them,
Mhm.
why would you try to sell something different when you can't even sell the thing that you originally started with? Let's get real, you're supposed to be expert at, right? So I always try to caution clients, don't add a laser on top of your aesthetic practice if you can't sell aesthetics, okay?
Mhm.
Right? Get good at that one thing and then expand, which I think is like a whole different topic we
I
could
was
go
just gonna
into.
say, I'm like, that's a whole nother can of worms. We'll save that for
100%.
another day for sure.
100%. Again, like you mentioned, now organically your content converts and you guys are doing it very genuinely and with an authentic voice. And I think probably it took you a few years to figure that out.
100%.
And I think the other thing that is really important to remember, and I said this at the beginning of this chat, which was try not to market things because you feel they're relevant or because that's something that's top of mind for you. You really have to have that ideal client in your mind and really understand their pain points. What are the things that make them move their ass to say yes to what it is that you are offering, whether it's the style that you do, the tone of voice you do it in? That's why your brand matters, right? So I think even if you don't understand pain points from your client's perspective, not your perspective, but
Mhm.
why do clients even come in? Or again, like if you're newer, you want to be asking those questions to every single client that comes in. It's like,
Yep.
why? I say this on my discovery calls with potential new clients. It's like, why now and why me?
Right.
Why is now the time that you're ready to finally get unstuck or grow your business or whatever it is? And why did you choose me? So that also I'm collecting data because that helps me retarget clients just like you.
Right.
So, right? Spas, med spas, aesthetic practice owners, you guys need to be doing the same thing. You agree?
100%. There's like 98% of the people that I have in my aesthetic practice manager group, they've met me at a conference. Like it's not like they're finding me on LinkedIn or they think that my shit's funny on Instagram, even though it is. They meet me in person because you really can't. understand what I do or how I do it unless you kind of meet me or you've heard a talk about something that I've done. So it's important for me to go to conferences because that's where my people are.
Yeah, and you can understand, like, they'll start opening up to you, right? And they'll say, like, "Oh, Brandon, I run this practice and here are my pain points."
Hmm.
And you're probably over there like, tell me
Yeah.
more, girl." Right?
Uh-huh.
Because then you know that you're gonna go back into your office and you're gonna create content based on those FAQs, based on those pain points, based on what everyone told you. Because
Hmm.
if that particular practice manager's issue, if you wanna grow your APMG, you're gonna retarget people with those same problems because if it's a problem for one, it's probably a problem for many.
Exactly.
And therefore, you now speak to your quote unquote ideal audience. So it's
Hmm.
literally that simple. But again, like a lot of people, just going back to the top of the chat, is like a lot of people want to skip over that and they just want to hire a marketing agency to do it for them. But I promise you, 9 times out of 10, in my experience, any clients I've worked with that try to bypass figuring out who their avatar is, their ideal clients, the ideal clients' pain points, what makes them take action, what makes them move forward and make that decision to choose you.
Hmm.
Don't bypass that. It's really like doing your business a disservice because now you're going to struggle longer to figure out who you are, what you do, and who you serve. But once you unlock that, your business is going to grow.
I couldn't agree more. Absolutely. Well, I think this has been an amazing chat. Let's wrap it up for today. What do you say?
Let's wrap it up.
Absolutely. So, thanks for joining us for another episode of the Injector Business Blueprint. Erin, thank you so much for breaking down how we can find that ideal customer, that ideal patient, and market to them. This has been a great chat. If you found today's episode valuable, hit subscribe and leave us a review. And if you're ready to dive deeper into building a profitable and fulfilling practice, check out the links in our show notes for additional resources. Remember, successful marketing isn't about reaching everyone, it's about connecting with the right people at the right time with your services. Until next time, stay focused and stay resilient.
Bye. Thanks for joining us on this episode of the Injectors Business Blueprint. We know your time is valuable and we appreciate you investing some of it with us. Comment, like, and subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts to continue the journey with us to push through those fears, doubts, and roadblocks to make the journey a little less lonely. So until next time, don't forget, you're blessed to be stressed.